The thunder cracked so loud, it sounded like the world was splitting in two, and Grant Whitmore had barely managed to get his gelding into the small barn behind his cabin when he heard something that made his heart stop, the unmistakable sound of a woman crying somewhere in the darkness beyond his property. It was late October of 1878 in Nevada, just outside the mining town of Virginia City, and the storm that had been brewing all afternoon had finally unleashed its fury across the high desert. Rain came down in sheets, so thick Grant could barely see 10 feet ahead, as he grabbed his oil lantern and stepped back out into the deluge. Most folks would have ignored strange sounds in a storm like this, written it off as wind or spooked cattle. But Grant Whitmore had always been the kind of man who couldn't turn away from someone in need, even if that quality had left him lonely more often than not. He was 32 years old and had spent the last decade working cattle ranches and doing odd jobs throughout Nevada and California, saving every dollar until he could finally buy this small piece of land 2 years back. The cabin was modest but solid, built with his own hands from timber he'd hauled down from the mountains. He had 20 head of cattle, 3 horses, and more solitude than any man should have to endure. His parents had died of fever when he was 19, and his only brother had been killed in a mining accident 5 years ago. Since then, Grant had kept mostly to himself, finding it easier to avoid attachment than to risk losing anyone else he cared about. But tonight, something pulled him forward through the storm. The crying grew louder as he rounded the side of his property, and there, huddled beneath the overhang of his wood shed, was a woman in a soaking wet dress, her dark hair plastered to her face, shivering so violently he could see it even in the poor light. "Miss." Grant called out, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. "Miss, are you hurt?" Her head snapped up, and even through the rain and darkness he could see the fear in her eyes. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the wall of the shed. "Please, I did not mean to trespass," she said, her voice trembling from cold and terror. "I just needed somewhere to wait out the storm. I will leave, I promise." "You will do no such thing," Grant said firmly, setting down the lantern and shrugging off his oilskin coat. "You will catch your death out here. Come inside where it is warm." "I cannot," she protested, but another violent shiver racked her body. "Yes, you can, and you will," Grant insisted, draping his coat over her shoulders. Even through the rain, he could feel how cold she was, her skin like ice beneath his hands. "I am not asking, miss. This storm is not letting up anytime soon, and you need to get dry and warm. We can sort out everything else once you are not freezing." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face in the lamplight, and whatever she saw there must have convinced her because she gave a small nod. Grant helped her to her feet, surprised by how slight she was, and guided her toward the cabin. The wind fought them every step, trying to tear them apart, but Grant kept a steady hand on her arm until they stumbled through his front door. Inside, the cabin was warm from the fire he had built earlier. It was a single large room with a stone fireplace on one wall, his bed in the corner, a small kitchen area with a cast iron stove, a table with 2 chairs, and not much else. Simple, but clean and dry. "Sit here by the fire," Grant instructed, pulling one of the chairs closer to the hearth. The woman obeyed, sinking into the chair as water pooled around her feet on the wooden floor. Now that they were in better light, Grant could see her more clearly. She looked to be in her mid-20s, with delicate features and dark eyes that held a haunted quality. Her dress, though muddy and soaked, had once been fine quality, the kind a city woman might wear. "I am going to get you a blanket and some dry clothes," Grant said. "You need to get out of that wet dress before you catch pneumonia." "I cannot wear your clothes," she protested weakly. "You can and you will," Grant repeated, already moving to his trunk. He pulled out one of his shirts and a pair of trousers, along with a thick wool blanket. "These will be too big, but they are dry. I will turn my back and tend to the fire. You change and do not argue with me." He heard her soft intake of breath, then the rustle of fabric as she stood. Grant kept his word, turning to face the fire and adding more wood while she changed. The storm continued to rage outside, rattling the shutters and howling down the chimney. "I am decent," she said finally, her voice small. Grant turned to find her swimming in his clothes, the shirt hanging almost to her knees, the trousers rolled up multiple times at the ankles. She had wrapped the blanket around herself, and her wet hair hung loose down her back. Even in his oversized clothes, there was something striking about her. "What is your name?" Grant asked gently, moving to the stove to put on water for coffee. She hesitated, and he saw that fear flicker in her eyes again. "Olivia, Olivia Bryant." "Well, Miss Bryant, I am Grant Whitmore, and you are safe here. Can you tell me what you were doing out in this storm? Virginia City is a good 5 miles from here." Olivia's hands twisted in the blanket, and for a moment, Grant thought she might not answer. Then the words came tumbling out in a rush. "I was running. I got off the stage in Virginia City this morning, but he found me. I thought I had more time. I thought I had gotten away clean, but he must have followed me from Carson City. I saw him on the street and I just ran. I did not know where I was going, I just knew I had to get away. I ended up walking out of town, and then the storm came and I was so turned around I did not know which way to go. I saw your light and I am sorry. I should not have come here. I am putting you in danger." Grant's jaw tightened. "Who is looking for you, my husband?" Olivia whispered, and the word came out like a curse. "Former husband. I mean, he is still legally my husband, but I left him. I had to leave him." She looked up at Grant then, and he saw the bruise on her cheek that he had missed in the dim light outside. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Did he do that to you?" Olivia's hand flew to her face, touching the bruise gingerly. "This is nothing. You should see what he did when he was truly angry." The coffee pot began to whistle, and Grant forced himself to move, to pour 2 cups of coffee with steady hands, even though rage was building in his chest. He had seen his share of men who hurt women, and every single one of them deserved to be horsewhipped as far as he was concerned. "Drink this," he said, handing her a cup. "It will help warm you up. And then you are going to tell me everything, because if this man is coming here, I need to know what we are dealing with." Olivia wrapped her hands around the cup, breathing in the steam. "His name is Marcus Bryant. We were married 3 years ago in San Francisco. He was charming at first, attentive, everything a woman could want. But after the wedding, he changed. Or maybe he just stopped pretending. The first time he hit me was a month after our wedding. He said I had embarrassed him at a dinner party. It only got worse from there." Grant sat down in the other chair, listening as Olivia's story poured out. She told him about the years of abuse, about how Marcus had isolated her from her family and friends, about how he controlled every aspect of her life. She told him about how she had finally found the courage to take the money she had been hiding for months and run while Marcus was away on business. "I have a sister in Oregon," Olivia explained. "I was trying to get to her, but I needed to stop and rest. I thought Virginia City would be safe, that it was far enough from San Francisco, but I was wrong." "You said you saw him today," Olivia nodded. "This morning, outside the general store. I was buying supplies for the next leg of the journey, and I looked up and there he was, getting off a horse not 30 yards away. I dropped everything and ran. I do not even know if he saw me, but I could not take the chance." The storm continued its assault on the cabin, and Grant stood to check the shutters and door, making sure everything was secure. His mind was racing, thinking through the options. If this Marcus character had tracked Olivia to Virginia City, he might have seen which direction she ran. But in this storm, it would be nearly impossible to track anyone. They had tonight, at least, maybe longer depending on how long the storm lasted. "You are safe here," Grant said firmly, turning back to face Olivia. "This storm is going to last through the night, possibly into tomorrow. No one is coming here in this weather. You can rest, get warm, and then we will figure out what to do next." "You do not understand," Olivia said, her voice breaking. "Marcus is not a reasonable man. If he finds you helping me, he will kill you. He has killed before. He shot a man in Sacramento who he thought was looking at me too long. He has money and connections, and he does not care about the law." "Then it is fortunate that we are out here where money and connections do not mean much," Grant said. "Out here, what matters is who can survive, who can work the land, who can handle themselves when trouble comes. I have been doing that for 15 years, Miss Bryant. I am not afraid of your husband." "You should be," Olivia whispered, but some of the tension had left her shoulders. Grant made them a simple meal of bacon, beans, and biscuits from his stores, and they ate in companionable silence as the storm raged on. Olivia was clearly exhausted, her eyes drooping even as she tried to stay alert. When she nodded off in her chair for the third time, Grant made a decision. "You take the bed," he said. "I will sleep on the floor by the fire. And before you argue, remember that you are a guest in my home and I was raised to treat guests properly." Olivia looked like she wanted to protest, but another wave of exhaustion washed over her and she simply nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. I cannot tell you what your kindness means to me." "Grant," he corrected. "Just Grant. Then you must call me Olivia." She moved to the bed and climbed in fully clothed, pulling the quilts up to her chin. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into sleep. Grant rolled out his bedroll by the fire, using his saddle as a pillow as he had done countless times on cattle drives. Despite the primitive accommodations, he found himself strangely content. For the first time in years, his cabin did not feel empty. He lay awake for a long time, listening to the storm and the soft sound of Olivia's breathing, and wondered what the morning would bring. The storm lasted through the night and into the next day, a relentless barrage of rain and wind that turned the roads to mud and kept everyone in the territory hunkered down. Grant woke before dawn to find Olivia still sleeping, her dark hair spread across his pillow. He banked the fire and slipped outside to tend to the animals, pulling on his still damp oilskin coat. The horses and cattle had weathered the storm well enough, sheltered as they were in the barn and the small covered pen he had built. Grant went through his morning routine, feeding and watering the animals, checking their hooves and coats for any problems. It was mindless work that gave him time to think. He had meant what he said last night about not being afraid of Marcus Bryant, but he was not stupid either. A man with money and connections who was willing to kill was a serious threat, and Grant needed to figure out the best way to keep Olivia safe. The most obvious solution was to get her on a stage to Oregon as quickly as possible, but that meant going back to Virginia City, and if Marcus was still there looking for her, it would be walking into a trap. When Grant returned to the cabin, he found Olivia awake, standing by the stove and looking uncertain. She had clearly been crying, her eyes red and puffy, but she straightened when she saw him. "I hope you do not mind," she said. "I made coffee. It seemed the least I could do." "I do not mind at all," Grant assured her, hanging his coat by the door and accepting the cup she poured for him. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly how he liked it. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in months," Olivia admitted. "I had forgotten what it felt like to sleep without fear." Thank you for that." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, sipping their coffee while the rain drummed on the roof. Finally, Grant spoke. "We need to talk about what comes next. This storm is keeping everyone inside for now, but it will pass eventually, probably by tomorrow. When it does, we need to have a plan." Olivia nodded, setting down her cup. "I need to get to Oregon to my sister. She married a logger and they have a place outside Portland. She has been begging me to leave Marcus for years. She will take me in." "Getting to Oregon means going through the mountains, and this late in the year. That is risky," Grant said carefully. "Winter comes early in the Sierras, and if you get caught in a snowstorm up there, you will not survive. The safer route would be to go north through Nevada and into Idaho, then west to Oregon. It is longer, but the passes stay clear later into the season." "How long would that take?" "A month, maybe 6 weeks if the weather holds." Olivia's face fell. "That is so long." "What if Marcus finds me before then?" "He will not, because I am going with you," Grant said, the words coming out before he had fully thought them through. But as soon as he said them, he knew they were right. "I can take you to Oregon, keep you safe along the way. I know the trails, I know how to handle trouble, and I have been wanting to see new country anyway." "You cannot do that," Olivia protested. "You have your ranch, your animals, your life here. I cannot ask you to give that up for a stranger." "You did not ask, I offered," Grant pointed out. "And it is not giving up anything permanent. My neighbor, Tom Cassidy, owes me a favor. He can look after my place while I am gone. His oldest boy is 16 and responsible. They can manage the cattle through the winter. I will be back come spring. Grant, I do not have money to pay you for this. I spent almost everything I had getting to Virginia City." "I am not asking for money," Grant said firmly. "I am offering to help because it is the right thing to do. No woman should have to run for her life from a man who vowed to protect her. It goes against everything decent." Olivia's eyes filled with tears again, and she looked away, clearly fighting to maintain her composure. "I do not understand why you would do this for me. You do not know me. For all you know, I could be lying about everything." "Are you lying?" "No." "Then that is all I need to know," Grant said simply. "Now we have at least a day, maybe 2 before the roads are passable enough for travel. Let us use that time to prepare. I need to pack supplies, talk to Tom about watching the place, and we need to get you properly outfitted for a long journey. Those city clothes of yours will not hold up." "I do not have anything else," Olivia said quietly. Grant thought for a moment, then snapped his fingers. "Tom's wife, Martha, is about your size. I bet she could spare some riding clothes, maybe a coat. She is good people, and she will understand once I explain the situation. You are going to tell them about me." "Tom and Martha, yes," Grant said. "I trust them completely and we need their help, but I will not tell anyone else. As far as the rest of Virginia City is concerned, we are just 2 people traveling north to prospect. Happens all the time." The storm did indeed last through that day and into the next night before finally blowing itself out. During that time, Grant and Olivia settled into an easy companionship that surprised them both. They talked while Grant oiled his saddles and checked his gear, while Olivia mended a tear in his spare shirt without being asked. She told him about her childhood in San Francisco, about her father who had been a banker and her mother who had loved music. She told him about her sister Rose, who had scandalized the family by running off with a logger, but who had been the only one to stand by Olivia when Marcus showed his true colors. Grant, in turn, told her about growing up in Nevada, about working cattle drives and learning to survive in harsh country. He told her about his brother Charlie and how much he still missed him. He found himself sharing things he had not spoken about in years, and Olivia listened with a compassion that made something in his chest ache. On the 3rd morning, Grant woke to clear skies and weak autumn sunlight. The ground was still muddy, but it was passable. He left Olivia in the cabin with his rifle and strict instructions to bar the door behind him, then rode to Tom Cassidy's place, 2 miles down the valley. Tom was a weathered rancher in his 50s with a kind face and sharp eyes. He listened carefully as Grant explained a carefully edited version of the situation, telling him he was helping a woman get away from a dangerous man, and asking if Tom could watch his place for a few months. "This woman must be something special for you to risk your neck like this," Tom observed, leaning against his barn and studying Grant carefully. "She is someone who needs help, and I can provide it," Grant said, keeping his voice neutral. "That is all." Tom was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "Martha will want to help. Come on up to the house." Martha Cassidy was a plump, warm woman who had raised 5 children and had opinions on everything. When Grant explained that he needed traveling clothes for a woman, she did not ask a single question, just marched into her bedroom and came back with a split riding skirt, 2 sturdy shirts, a wool coat, and a hat. "These should fit well enough," Martha said, bundling everything into a bag. "You tell this woman that she is welcome to stay here if she needs to, you hear me? Any friend of yours is a friend of ours." "I appreciate that, Martha," Grant said sincerely. "And Grant," Martha caught his arm as he turned to go, "you be careful out there. Bad men who hurt women do not take kindly to being thwarted. You watch your back." "I will." Grant returned to the cabin to find Olivia pacing nervously, the rifle clutched in her hands. She visibly relaxed when she saw it was him, setting down the weapon and pressing a hand to her heart. "I thought I heard riders," she explained. "It was just my imagination, but I could not help it." "Better safe than sorry," Grant said, setting down the bag from Martha. "Here, these should fit you better than my clothes. Martha Cassidy sends her regards and says you are welcome at their place any time." Olivia opened the bag and stared at the contents, her eyes welling up. "I do not know how to thank you for all of this. You and the Cassidys, you have been so kind." "Thank us by getting to Oregon safely," Grant said gruffly, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Now we have work to do. We leave at first light tomorrow." They spent the rest of the day preparing. Grant packed his saddlebags with supplies for the journey: dried meat, flour, coffee, beans, ammunition, and a few other essentials. He checked and rechecked his weapons, an old Army Colt revolver and a Winchester rifle, making sure they were clean and functional. Olivia helped where she could, rolling blankets and organizing supplies with an efficiency that surprised him. "I am not completely helpless," she said with a small smile when she caught him watching. "I grew up with 3 sisters. We all had to pull our weight." "I did not think you were helpless," Grant said. "A helpless woman would not have had the courage to run from a man like Marcus Bryant." That night, they shared another simple meal, and Grant went over the route they would take. They would head north through Nevada, avoiding the larger towns where Marcus might be looking, stick to smaller mining camps and ranches where strangers were common and questions were few. From there, they would cross into Idaho and follow the Snake River west until they could cut north into Oregon. "It will not be easy," Grant warned. "We will be camping rough most nights, riding long days. There is weather to worry about and wild animals and the possibility of running into unsavory characters. I will keep you as safe as I can, but I cannot promise there will not be danger." "I understand," Olivia said firmly. "And I am not afraid. Well, I am afraid, but not of the journey. I am more afraid of staying here and having Marcus find me." They set out before dawn the next morning, riding double on Grant's strongest horse while leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. Olivia sat behind Grant, her arms wrapped around his waist, and he tried to ignore how right it felt to have her there. The pre-dawn air was cold and crisp, their breath forming clouds in the darkness as they made their way north. Grant set a steady pace, not pushing the horses too hard but keeping them moving. They stayed off the main roads, following game trails and ranch tracks that only someone who knew the country well would recognize. By the time the sun was fully up, they had put 10 miles between themselves and Grant's cabin. They stopped briefly at midday to rest the horses and eat a cold lunch, then pressed on. Olivia did not complain once, even though Grant knew she must be sore from the unaccustomed riding. She sat straight behind him, alert and watchful, scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. As the sun began to set, Grant found them a sheltered spot in a stand of cottonwoods near a small creek. He helped Olivia down from the horse, noting the way she winced when her feet hit the ground. "Sore?" he asked. "A bit," she admitted, "but I will survive." Grant made camp efficiently, unsaddling the horses and setting them to graze on a long picket line, building a small fire that would provide warmth without too much smoke and setting out their bedrolls. Olivia tried to help, but he could see exhaustion pulling at her. "Sit," he instructed. "Rest while I get dinner ready." She obeyed without argument, settling onto a log near the fire and watching as Grant prepared a meal of bacon and beans. The temperature was dropping rapidly now that the sun was down, and Grant added more wood to the fire. "Tell me something," Olivia said suddenly. "Why did you never marry? You are a good man, Grant Whitmore. Surely there have been women who caught your eye." Grant was quiet for a moment, stirring the beans. "There were a few over the years, but I never seemed to have the time or the money to court properly, and then after my brother died, I guess I just stopped looking. Easier to be alone than to risk losing anyone else." "That sounds lonely." "It was," Grant admitted, "but loneliness is safer than heartbreak." "I used to think that too," Olivia said softly. "When I was with Marcus, I was so lonely I thought I would die from it, but I was too afraid to leave, too afraid of what he would do if I tried. I convinced myself that lonely and alive was better than free and dead." "What changed?" Olivia was quiet for so long that Grant thought she might not answer. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "He killed my baby." Grant's hand stilled on the pan. "Olivia." "I was 4 months pregnant," she continued, staring into the fire. "I had not told him yet because I was terrified of how he would react. One night he came home drunk and angry about some business deal that had gone wrong. He started hitting me, worse than he ever had before. I curled up trying to protect my stomach, but it did not matter. I lost the baby 2 days later." Rage, hot and fierce, flooded through Grant. He set down the pan carefully, not trusting himself to speak for a moment. "I am so sorry," he finally managed, the words inadequate for the horror of what she had described. "After that, I knew I had to leave or he would kill me too eventually, so I started planning. I sold my jewelry piece by piece. Things he did not notice were gone. I saved every penny I could. And then one day, he left for Sacramento on business and I ran. That was 3 weeks ago." Grant served up the food and handed her a plate, his mind churning. Marcus Bryant was worse than he had imagined, and the knowledge that such a monster was hunting Olivia made his blood run cold. But it also strengthened his resolve. He would get her to Oregon safely, no matter what it took. They ate in silence, and afterward, Grant showed Olivia how to clean the dishes with sand from the creek bank. The night was fully dark now, the sky overhead a vast field of stars. A coyote howled in the distance and Olivia moved closer to the fire. "You should sleep," Grant said. "I will take first watch." "Watch for what?" "Anything. Wild animals mostly, maybe bandits, though they are not common in this area." and just in case Marcus somehow managed to track us, though I do not think that is likely." Olivia looked uneasy but settled into her bedroll without argument. Grant sat with his back against a tree, rifle across his knees, and watched the darkness beyond the firelight. He could hear Olivia's breathing gradually even out as she fell asleep, and found himself thinking about what she had told him. He had known Marcus Bryant was a bad man, but the depth of his cruelty still shocked Grant. What kind of monster beat his pregnant wife so badly she lost the baby? Grant had seen a lot of evil in his life, but this felt particularly heinous. A woman should be cherished and protected, not brutalized and terrorized. His own mother had been tiny but fierce, and his father had treated her like she was made of spun glass, precious and irreplaceable. That was how it should be. The night passed slowly. Grant kept the fire burning low and his senses alert for any hint of trouble. Around midnight, he woke Olivia to take a turn at watch, showing her how to keep the fire going and what to listen for. She looked uncertain but determined, clutching the rifle he handed her. "If you see or hear anything that does not feel right, wake me immediately," Grant instructed. "Do not try to handle it yourself. Understand?" "I understand." Grant lay down in his bedroll but found it difficult to sleep, hyper-aware of Olivia sitting nearby, keeping watch over him. It felt strange to trust someone so completely after so many years of solitude. But somehow, in just a few days, Olivia had become someone he cared about, someone he wanted to protect. The intensity of that feeling should have worried him, but he was too tired to examine it closely. They fell into a rhythm over the next week, riding from dawn until dusk, making camp in sheltered spots, taking turns at watch through the night. The weather held, cold but clear, and they made good progress northward. Olivia proved to be a quick learner, adapting to the rigors of trail life with a resilience that impressed Grant. She learned to help with camp chores, to read the landscape for water and shelter, to sit a horse for hours without complaint, despite the soreness. They talked during the long days of riding, sharing stories, and slowly getting to know each other. Grant told her about his childhood, about learning to rope and ride from a grizzled old ranch hand named Pedro who had taken him under his wing. Olivia told him about her sisters, about learning to play piano and paint watercolors, skills that seemed from another world out here in the Nevada wilderness. "I was going to be a music teacher," she said one afternoon as they followed a narrow canyon north, "before I married Marcus. My father thought it was unseemly for a banker's daughter to work, but I convinced him it would be a good way to meet suitable friends. I loved teaching, loved seeing children light up when they finally mastered a difficult piece. Why did you marry Marcus if you had a life you loved?" Olivia was quiet for a moment. "He swept me off my feet. He was handsome and charming and seemed so sophisticated. My parents approved of him. All my friends were jealous. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. By the time I realized what he really was, it was too late." "It is never too late," Grant said firmly. "You got away. That took incredible courage. I do not feel very courageous. Mostly I feel afraid." "Bravery is not the absence of fear," Grant said. "It is doing what needs to be done despite the fear." "You are one of the bravest people I have ever met, Olivia Bryant." She did not respond, but he felt her arms tighten slightly around his waist, and he smiled. They stopped for supplies at a small mining camp called Tuscarora, Nevada, about 2 weeks into their journey. It was barely more than a collection of tents and rough wooden buildings clustered around a silver mine, but it had a trading post where they could replenish their dwindling stores. Grant left Olivia with the horses outside of town and went in alone, not wanting to risk anyone remembering her. The trading post was run by a grizzled old man who looked like he had been there since Nevada became a territory. He barely glanced at Grant as he filled his order, clearly used to solitary prospectors coming through. Grant paid with silver coins and was back on the trail within an hour. "Everything go all right?" Olivia asked as they rode away from Tuscarora. "Fine. No trouble at all." But that night, as Grant lay in his bedroll staring up at the stars, he found himself thinking about what would happen when they reached Oregon. He would deliver Olivia safely to her sister, make sure she was settled, and then he would turn around and ride back to Nevada. Back to his cabin and his cattle and his solitude. The thought should have been comforting, a return to the life he had built for himself. Instead, it filled him with a hollow ache. Somewhere along the trail, Olivia had become more than just someone he was helping. She had become a companion, someone whose laugh he looked forward to hearing, whose presence made even the hardest day more bearable. The realization should have terrified him, this growing attachment to a woman who was still legally married to a dangerous man. But instead, it felt inevitable, like a river finding its way to the sea. He glanced over at Olivia, sleeping peacefully in her bedroll across the fire, her face soft and unguarded in sleep. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. She was strong and kind and resilient, everything he had not known he was looking for, and she was completely out of reach. Grant turned over and closed his eyes, trying to push the thoughts away. He was here to keep her safe, nothing more. It would be wrong to burden her with his feelings when she had just escaped one man who had tried to control her. The best thing he could do was get her to Oregon and let her start the new life she deserved. But knowing what he should do and being able to do it were two entirely different things. 3 weeks into their journey, as they crossed into Idaho, the first snow began to fall. It started as light flurries that melted as soon as they hit the ground, but by afternoon it was coming down steadily, large wet flakes that clung to their clothes and the horses' manes. Grant had been watching the sky anxiously all morning, recognizing the signs of a major storm building. "We need to find shelter," he said, scanning the landscape. They were following the Snake River through a region of rocky hills and sparse pine forests, beautiful but exposed. "There is a trading post about 5 miles ahead, if I am remembering right. If we push hard, we can make it before the storm really hits." They urged the horses into a faster pace, racing against the weather. The snow was falling harder now, reducing visibility and making the trail treacherous. Grant kept one hand on the reins and the other wrapped around Olivia's hands where they clasped his waist, trying to share what warmth he could. They almost missed the trading post, a low log building that blended into the snowy landscape. Only the thin stream of smoke from its chimney gave it away. Grant guided the horses to the small stable behind the building and helped Olivia down, both of them stiff and half frozen. "Get inside," he told her. "I will see to the horses." Olivia nodded, her teeth chattering too hard for her to speak. Grant watched her stumble toward the trading post door before turning back to the horses. He worked as quickly as his frozen fingers would allow, unsaddling the animals and rubbing them down, making sure they had feed and water. By the time he finished and made his way inside, he could barely feel his hands or feet. The trading post was warm and dim, heated by a massive stone fireplace. There was a small store area with shelves of supplies, a bar along one wall, and a few rough tables scattered around the room. A handful of men sat drinking, rough-looking trappers and traders weathering out the storm. Olivia sat at a table near the fire, her hands wrapped around a cup of something hot. The trading post owner, a large man with a black beard, stood behind the bar watching Grant with cautious eyes. "Room for 2 more to wait out the storm?" Grant asked, stamping snow off his boots. "Got space," the man said. 4 bits a night per person includes meals. Whiskey is extra. Fair enough. Grant paid for 2 nights, figuring the storm would blow through by then, and joined Olivia at the table. Up close, he could see she was still shivering despite the fire. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "Just cold," she managed. "The owner's wife brought me tea. She was very kind." As if summoned by the mention, a woman emerged from a back room carrying 2 bowls of stew. She was Native American, Grant noticed, probably Shoshone based on the style of her dress, and she moved with quiet efficiency as she set the bowls down in front of them. "Thank you," Grant said, and she nodded before disappearing back into the kitchen. They ate in silence, too tired and cold for conversation. The stew was simple but hot, warming them from the inside. Gradually, Grant felt sensation returning to his fingers and toes, along with the painful tingling that came with thawing out. Across the table, Olivia's shivers were finally subsiding, color returning to her cheeks. "That was too close," Grant said quietly. "Another hour in that storm and we would have been in serious trouble." "How much longer until we reach Oregon?" Olivia asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4, depending on the weather. We are making good time, but winter is catching up with us. We need to be smart about when we travel and when we hole up." One of the men at the bar, a lean fellow with cold eyes and a scar across his cheek, had been watching them. Now he stood and walked over to their table, swaying slightly from drink. "Well now," he said, his words slurred. "Ain't you a pretty little thing? What's a fine lady like you doing out in this country with just one man to protect you?" "We are just passing through," Grant said evenly, keeping his voice calm but firm. "No trouble here." "Wasn't talking to you, friend," the man said, his eyes never leaving Olivia. "I was talking to the lady." "And the lady is not interested in conversation," Grant said, standing up slowly. He was several inches taller than the drunk and broader across the shoulders. "Now, I suggest you go back to your drink and leave us be." The drunk's hand dropped to the knife at his belt, and Grant tensed, ready to move. But before things could escalate further, the trading post owner appeared with a shotgun in his hands. "That is enough, Crawford," he said firmly. "These folks are paying customers and you will leave them alone, or you will spend the night in the stable with the horses. Your choice." Crawford glared at Grant for another moment, then spat on the floor and stalked back to the bar, muttering curses under his breath. The owner caught Grant's eye and nodded toward a door at the back of the room. "You and the missus can have the private room tonight," he said. "Be more comfortable and safer." "We are not married," Grant started to say, but Olivia cut him off. "Thank you," she said to the owner. "That is very kind of you." The private room was small but clean, with a single bed and a washstand. An oil lamp provided soft light, and the walls muffled the sounds from the main room. As soon as the door closed behind them, Olivia sank down onto the bed and buried her face in her hands. "Are you all right?" Grant asked, kneeling in front of her. "That man," she whispered. "The way he looked at me, it reminded me of Marcus." "He will not touch you," Grant said fiercely. "I promise you that. And tomorrow, when the storm clears, we will be back on the trail away from here." Olivia looked up at him, and there were tears on her cheeks. "I am so tired of being afraid. I am tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of men thinking they have a right to me." "You have every right to be tired," Grant said gently. "But you are not alone in this anymore. I am here and I will keep you safe." "Why?" Olivia asked, searching his face. "Why do you care so much about what happens to me?" Grant opened his mouth, then closed it again, unsure how to answer. "Because somewhere along the trail you became important to me. Because when I look at you, I see a future I did not know I wanted. Because the thought of Marcus Bryant or anyone else hurting you makes me want to commit violence." He could not say any of that, so instead he said simply, "Because it is the right thing to do." Olivia held his gaze for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression, something soft and wondering. Then she reached out and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I think it is more than that," she said quietly. "I think you care because you are a good man, Grant Whitmore, maybe the best man I have ever known. And I want you to know that I care about you too. Very much." Grant's heart hammered in his chest. "Olivia, you are still married. I would not take advantage of you in that situation." "I know you would not," she said. "That is one of the many reasons I care about you. You have been nothing but honorable and kind. But Grant, that marriage stopped being real the first time Marcus hit me. In every way that matters, I stopped being his wife years ago." "The law does not see it that way." "Then the law is wrong," Olivia said firmly. She squeezed his hand. "I am not asking you for anything you are not ready to give. I just wanted you to know how I feel. You have given me hope again, Grant. You have reminded me that not all men are monsters, that there is still kindness in the world. Whatever happens when we get to Oregon, I will always be grateful for that." Grant stood slowly, his hand still clasped in hers, and felt something crack open in his chest. For so many years, he had kept himself carefully controlled, not letting anyone get too close. But Olivia had slipped past his defenses without even trying, and now the thought of saying goodbye to her in Oregon was physically painful. "You should sleep," he said, his voice rough. "I will take the floor. Grant, we are both adults and that bed is big enough for two. We have been sleeping near each other for weeks now. I trust you." After a moment's hesitation, Grant nodded. They lay down on opposite sides of the bed, fully clothed, maintaining a careful distance. But sometime during the night, Grant woke to find Olivia had rolled toward him in her sleep, her hand resting on his chest, her head tucked against his shoulder. He should have moved away, maintained the proper distance, but instead he found his arm wrapping around her, holding her close. She sighed in her sleep and snuggled closer, and Grant closed his eyes, memorizing the feeling of her in his arms. Just for tonight, he told himself. Just for tonight, he would allow himself this. The storm blew through by morning, leaving the world blanketed in fresh snow. Grant and Olivia set out early, both of them quiet after the intimacy of the night before, but it was a comfortable silence, charged with new understanding. The landscape was transformed, everything white and pristine, and the horses' hooves made soft, crunching sounds in the snow. They traveled for another 10 days through Idaho, following the Snake River west. The weather remained cold but clear, perfect for traveling. They passed through small settlements and trading posts, and Grant noticed that Olivia seemed more relaxed now, less constantly afraid. She smiled more often, laughed at his jokes, and sometimes he would catch her watching him with an expression that made his heart race. One evening, as they made camp in a sheltered canyon, Olivia surprised him by asking, "Will you teach me to shoot?" Grant looked up from the fire he was building. "Why?" "Because I am tired of being helpless. If Marcus catches up with us or if we run into trouble, I want to be able to defend myself. I want to be able to defend you." Grant considered for a moment, then nodded. "All right, we will start tomorrow morning." And so, in the mornings before they broke camp, Grant taught Olivia to shoot. She was a natural, her hand steady and her eye good. Within a week, she could hit a target consistently at 20 yards with the revolver, and she was learning to handle the rifle. "You are a good teacher," she said one morning after putting 3 shots in a tight group on a piece of wood Grant had marked with charcoal. "You are a good student," he replied, meaning it. Watching her gain confidence, seeing her transform from a frightened woman always looking over her shoulder into someone strong and capable, filled him with pride. One night, 3 weeks into their journey and only a week from the Oregon border, they made camp in a stand of pine trees beside a small creek. The air was sharp and cold, promising more snow, but the sky was clear and filled with stars. After dinner, they sat side by side on a fallen log, watching the fire and talking quietly. "Tell me something," Olivia said. "What will you do when you get back to Nevada? After you leave me in Oregon?" Grant was quiet for a long moment. "I suppose I will go back to my cabin, back to my cattle, back to the life I had before." "Will you be happy?" The question hung in the air between them. Grant wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that he could go back to his solitary life and be content. But he knew it was a lie. "No," he said finally, "I do not think I will be." "Then why go back?" "Because it is my home, my land. Everything I have worked for is there." "Land and cattle and an empty cabin," Olivia said softly. "Grant, that is not a life. That is just existing. What else am I supposed to do?" Olivia turned to face him, and in the firelight her eyes were luminous. "You could stay in Oregon. You could build a new life there. You could be happy." "Olivia, I know I am still married. I know that legally I belong to Marcus until death or divorce, and I have no money for a divorce. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But Grant, these past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life, despite everything. You make me feel safe and valued and seen in a way I never have before. And I hope, that maybe you feel something for me too." Grant reached out and cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I feel everything for you. That is the problem. You have been through hell, Olivia. You need time to heal, to figure out who you are outside of Marcus Bryant. You do not need me confusing things by telling you that I have fallen in love with you somewhere along this trail." Olivia's breath caught. "You love me. How could I not?" Grant said, the words spilling out now that he had started. "You are brave and kind and strong and beautiful, and every day I spend with you, I fall a little more in love. But you need time and space and the freedom to make your own choices without feeling obligated to me because I helped you." "I do not feel obligated," Olivia said fiercely. "Grant, I love you too. I think I started falling for you that first night in your cabin when you gave me your bed and slept on the floor without a second thought. Every kind thing you have done, every time you have protected me or taught me something or just listened when I needed to talk, I have fallen more in love with you. This is not obligation or gratitude. This is real." Grant leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but then Olivia's arms came around his neck and she pressed closer, and the kiss deepened. It was everything Grant had imagined and more, sweet and fierce and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Grant rested his forehead against hers. "We cannot do more than this," he said reluctantly. "Not while you are still married to him. It would not be right." "I know," Olivia said, "and I respect that about you. But Grant, when we get to Oregon, we are finding a way to end my marriage to Marcus. Rose's husband, Tom, he knows lawyers. We will find a way, even if I have to work for years to pay for it. And then, when I am truly free, I want to build a life with you if you will have me." "If I will have you," Grant laughed, the sound rough with emotion. "Olivia, I would wait forever for you." They held each other as the fire burned low. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Grant felt truly at peace. They crossed into Oregon 4 days later, descending from the mountains into the lush river valleys of the Western Territory. The change in landscape was dramatic, from the sparse high desert of Nevada and Idaho to the dense forests and green fields of Oregon. Rain fell frequently, different from the harsh storms of the high country, gentle and persistent. Olivia's sister lived outside of Portland, near the town of Oregon City, and it took them another week of traveling to reach the area. They stopped in Oregon City to ask directions and to send a letter ahead to Rose, letting her know Olivia was safe and on her way. The town was bustling with loggers and farmers, quite different from the rough mining camps they had passed through. Finally, on a gray afternoon in late November, they rode up to a small but well-kept farmhouse set among towering pine trees. Before they had even reached the front porch, the door flew open and a woman came running out, her skirts hiked up, her face a mixture of joy and disbelief. "Olivia!" she cried, and then Olivia was sliding down from the horse, and the two sisters were embracing, both crying and talking over each other. Grant dismounted and hung back, giving them privacy for their reunion. A man emerged from the house, tall and broad-shouldered with the weathered look of someone who worked outdoors. This must be Tom, the logger Rose had married. "You must be Grant Whitmore," Tom said, extending his hand. "Rose got your letter. Come on, let us get these horses settled and give the ladies time to catch up." Grant followed Tom to a small barn behind the house, and together they unsaddled the horses and got them comfortable. Tom worked efficiently, asking casual questions about the journey, and Grant found himself liking the man immediately. He was straightforward and kind, with steady hands and an easy manner. "Rose has been worried sick about Olivia for years," Tom said as they finished up. "When your letter arrived saying she had gotten away from that bastard Bryant and that you were bringing her here safely, I do not think Rose stopped crying for an hour. Good tears, mind you. She is beyond grateful to you." "I just did what anyone would do," Grant said. "No, you did not," Tom corrected firmly. "Most men would have turned her away or worse. You risked your life to help a woman you did not even know. That makes you a good man in my book." They walked back to the house together and found Olivia and Rose sitting at the kitchen table, still holding hands, talking rapidly. Rose looked similar to Olivia, though a bit older and with lighter hair. When she saw Grant, she stood and came over to him. "Mr. Whitmore, I cannot thank you enough for what you have done for my sister. You saved her life. Please just call me Grant, and I was happy to help." "You are welcome to stay here as long as you need," Rose said. "We have a spare room and plenty of food, and I know Olivia would like you to stay for a while after that long journey." Grant glanced at Olivia, who nodded eagerly. "Please stay, Grant, at least for a few days. You have ridden so far, you deserve to rest." And so Grant found himself settling into the guest room of Tom and Rose's farmhouse, and the days stretched into a week, then two. He helped Tom with work around the property, repairing fences and cutting firewood, keeping his hands busy while his mind grappled with what came next. He knew he should return to Nevada, to his own land and his own responsibilities. But every time he thought about leaving, about riding away from Olivia, his chest tightened with dread. Olivia and Rose were working with a lawyer in Oregon City, a sharp young man named Daniel Frost, who specialized in family law. The situation was complicated because Marcus was in California and had not been served with any papers. But Frost was confident they could build a case for divorce based on abandonment and cruelty. It would take time, possibly years, but it was possible. "The challenge is that your husband has not been located to be served," Frost explained during one meeting that Grant attended at Olivia's request. "We can publish notice in newspapers, but if he does not respond, we will have to pursue a more lengthy process. However, based on what you have told me about the abuse, I believe we can make a strong case." "How long will it take?" Olivia asked. "Realistically, at least a year, possibly two. These things move slowly, especially when one party is difficult to locate." A year or two seemed like an eternity, but at least it was hope. Olivia squeezed Grant's hand under the table, and he squeezed back, silently promising to wait as long as it took. Christmas came and went, a quiet celebration with just the four of them. It snowed on Christmas Eve, a heavy blanket of white that transformed the farm into a winter wonderland. Grant helped Tom cut a small tree and drag it back to the house, and Olivia and Rose decorated it with strings of dried berries and paper ornaments. It was the best Christmas Grant had ever had, full of warmth and laughter and love. On New Year's Eve, as they sat around the fire watching the old year turn into the new, Tom cleared his throat. "Grant, I have been thinking. I could use a partner in the logging business. It is growing faster than I can handle on my own, and you have skills that would be valuable. Good head for business, strong back, not afraid of hard work. If you are interested, I would like to offer you a stake in the operation. Equal partners." Grant stared at him, stunned. "Tom, I could not possibly." "Why not?" Tom asked reasonably. "You have been a huge help these past weeks. You are good with the men, you understand lumber and pricing, and you are not afraid to get your hands dirty. Plus, Rose wants Olivia to stay close, and I suspect you want the same thing. This way, everyone gets what they want." "I have land in Nevada," Grant protested weakly. "Sell it or keep it, that is up to you," Tom said. "But Grant, there is nothing for you there except loneliness. Here, you have friends, work, and once Olivia is free, a future with the woman you love. Seems like an easy choice to me." Grant looked at Olivia, who was watching him with hopeful eyes. "What do you think?" "I think I want you to do whatever makes you happy," Olivia said carefully. "But I also think that I love you, and the thought of you going back to Nevada while I am stuck here waiting for a divorce makes my heart hurt. If you stayed, we could wait together. We could build something together, even if we have to wait to make it official." And just like that, the decision was made. Grant sent word to Tom Cassidy in Nevada, asking him to sell the ranch and cattle and send the proceeds to Oregon. It felt like closing a chapter of his life, but it also felt right, like he was finally moving towards something instead of just existing. The months rolled by. Grant and Tom's logging business thrived, and Grant found he enjoyed the work, the satisfaction of turning raw timber into lumber that would build homes and businesses. Olivia found work teaching piano to the children of wealthy families in Oregon City, her face lighting up when she talked about her students. In the evenings, the four of them would sit together, playing cards or reading or just talking, and Grant marveled at how completely his life had changed. The only shadow over their happiness was the ongoing threat of Marcus Bryant. They had heard nothing from him, which was both reassuring and unsettling. Olivia still had nightmares sometimes, waking up gasping and terrified, and Grant would hold her and murmur reassurances until she fell back asleep. They were careful, never venturing into town alone, always watching for strangers, but as the months passed with no sign of Marcus, they began to hope that perhaps he had given up. That hope was shattered one afternoon in late spring. Grant was at the lumber mill in Oregon City, going over accounts when a logger named Jack burst in, his face pale. "Grant, there is a man asking questions in town. Well-dressed fellow, says he is looking for his wife. Has a picture of a woman who looks an awful lot like Olivia." Grant's blood ran cold. "Where is he now?" "At the hotel, last I saw. He has been flashing money around, asking if anyone has seen her." Grant was out the door before Jack finished speaking, running for the farm. It was 3 miles, and he pushed himself hard, his heart pounding with fear. If Marcus had found them, if he had already gotten to the farm. He burst through the farmhouse door to find Olivia and Rose in the kitchen, startled by his abrupt entrance. "Marcus is here," Grant gasped out, bending over to catch his breath. "In Oregon City. He is asking questions, showing your picture." Olivia's face drained of color. How did he find me? Does it matter? Grant straightened up, his mind racing. We need to assume he will track you here eventually. Tom is still at the mill, but I sent Jack to warn him. We need to get you somewhere safe. I am tired of running, Olivia said, and there was steel in her voice. I have been running for over a year, and I am done. This is my home now, our home. I will not let him take that away from me. Olivia, he is dangerous. So am I, she said firmly, and pulled out the revolver Grant had given her months ago. She had been practicing regularly and was now an excellent shot. I am not that frightened woman you found in the storm anymore, Grant. I am stronger now, and I am not afraid of him, not with you beside me. Before Grant could respond, there was the sound of a horse approaching. They all rushed to the window and saw a well-dressed man on a fine bay horse riding up to the house. Marcus Bryant had found them. Grant positioned himself in front of Olivia, his hand on his own gun. Rose, go upstairs and stay there. Like hell I will, Rose said, producing a shotgun from behind the kitchen door. This is my house and my sister. I am staying. The knock on the door was sharp and imperious. Grant and Olivia exchanged a look, and then Grant walked over and opened it. Marcus Bryant was a handsome man, Grant had to admit, with dark hair and fine features. He was dressed in an expensive suit and looked every inch the wealthy San Francisco businessman. But his eyes were cold and hard, and there was a cruel set to his mouth. I am looking for my wife, Marcus said without preamble. Olivia Bryant, I have been informed she is here. I do not know who informed you of that, but you are mistaken, Grant said evenly. Am I? Marcus's eyes flicked past Grant and his face hardened. Olivia, there you are, my dear. You have led me on quite the chase. It is time to come home now. This is my home, Olivia said, stepping forward to stand beside Grant. I am not going anywhere with you, Marcus. You are my wife, Marcus said, his voice dropping into a dangerous register that Grant recognized. This was a man barely controlling his rage. You will do as I say. I stopped being your wife the day you beat me so badly I lost our baby, Olivia said, her voice shaking but strong. I have filed for divorce, Marcus. It is over. Divorce? Marcus laughed, the sound ugly. On what grounds? You abandoned me, Olivia. If anyone has cause for divorce, it is me. And even if you somehow manage to get one, do you really think I will let you live happily ever after with this cowboy? I will destroy you both. You need to leave, Grant said, his hand moving to his gun. Now. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Or what? You will shoot me. That would be murder, and there are witnesses in town who know I came here. You would hang. It would be self-defense, Rose called from inside the house. And we have 3 witnesses who will testify that you threatened my sister and her intended. Her intended, Marcus's face contorted with rage. She is my wife, you stupid woman. She belongs to me. Olivia does not belong to anyone, Grant said coldly. She is a person, not property. And if you do not leave right now, I will throw you off this land. Marcus took a step forward, his hand going to his coat, and Grant tensed, ready to draw. But before anyone could move, there was another horse approaching, and Tom rode into the yard with the sheriff of Oregon City beside him. Mr. Bryant, the sheriff called out, dismounting, I am Sheriff Daniels. I need you to step away from that house, sir. This is a private matter between me and my wife, Marcus protested. No, sir. This is a matter of you trespassing on private property and harassing these folks, Sheriff Daniels said firmly. Now, I understand you have a claim to Miss Olivia there, marriage certificate and all. But she has filed for divorce, and until that is settled, you have no legal right to force her to go anywhere. And you certainly have no right to threaten these people on their own land. She is my wife, Marcus repeated, but some of the confidence had drained from his voice. And this is Oregon, Not California, the sheriff said. Our judges take a dim view of men who abuse women. If even half of what Miss Olivia has stated in her divorce petition is true, you are lucky I am not arresting you right now for assault. My advice to you is to return to California, and if you have objections to the divorce, you make them through proper legal channels. But if I hear of you bothering these folks again, I will arrest you for harassment. Are we clear? Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but he was outgunned and outmaneuvered. After a long, tense moment, he turned to Olivia. "This is not over," he said quietly. "You are mine, Olivia. You will always be mine." "No, Marcus," Olivia said, and her voice was strong and clear. "I was never yours. You took me by deceit and held me by fear, but my heart was never yours. It belongs to Grant now, and there is nothing you can do about it." Marcus's face twisted with rage, and for a moment, Grant thought he might do something stupid, but the sheriff's hand on his gun convinced him otherwise. Marcus spun on his heel and mounted his horse, wheeling it around. "You will regret this," he said. "All of you." Then he spurred his horse and galloped away. Everyone stood frozen for a moment, watching him disappear down the road. Then Olivia sagged against Grant, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight. "It is over," he murmured into her hair. "He is gone." "For now," Olivia said, but she sounded more tired than afraid. "But Grant, I meant what I said. My heart belongs to you. It has for a long time now." "And mine belongs to you," Grant said, pulling back to look into her eyes. "Always." Sheriff Daniels cleared his throat. "Miss Olivia, I am going to need you to come into town and file a formal complaint about his threats. It will help your divorce case, and it will give me cause to arrest him if he shows up here again." Olivia nodded. "I will come tomorrow." After the sheriff left, the four of them went inside and collapsed around the kitchen table. Rose immediately put on coffee, and Tom pulled out a bottle of whiskey, pouring generous measures for everyone. "To facing down our demons," Tom said, raising his glass. They all drank, the whiskey burning warmth into Grant's chest. "I was so afraid," Olivia admitted, her hands shaking around her coffee cup. "When I saw him standing there, all that old terror came flooding back. But then I looked at you, Grant and Rose and Tom, and I realized I was not alone anymore. I had people who loved me, people who would stand with me." And suddenly Marcus did not seem so frightening anymore. "He is just a bully, and bullies only have power when we give it to them." "You were incredibly brave," Rose said, reaching across to squeeze her sister's hand. "I am so proud of you." That night, as Grant lay in his bed unable to sleep, he heard a soft knock on his door. He opened it to find Olivia standing there in her nightgown, her hair loose around her shoulders. "I cannot sleep," she said quietly. "Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. Can I stay with you?" "Just to sleep, I promise. I just need to feel safe." Grant opened the door wider, and Olivia slipped inside. They lay down together on the narrow bed, Grant on his back and Olivia curled against his side, her head on his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, and felt her gradually relax. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For saving me, for bringing me here, for loving me." "You do not need to thank me for loving you," Grant said softly. "That is the easiest thing I have ever done." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and for the first time since Marcus had appeared, Grant felt at peace. The next morning, Olivia went into Oregon City with Tom and filed her complaint. Sheriff Daniels took her statement seriously and assured her that if Marcus showed his face in the area again, he would be arrested immediately. But there was no sign of Marcus, and as the days passed, they began to hope he had truly given up and returned to California. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived for Olivia from Daniel Frost, their lawyer. Marcus had been served with divorce papers and had not contested them. In fact, His lawyer had reached out to negotiate terms. Marcus was willing to grant Olivia a divorce in exchange for her signing away any claim to his property or money. He wants to make sure I cannot take anything from him, Olivia explained as they all gathered around the table to discuss the news. He is willing to let me go, but only if I leave with nothing. Do you care about his money? Grant asked. Not even a little bit, Olivia said firmly. I just want to be free of him. Then sign the papers, Rose urged. Get free and move on with your life. And so, on a sunny day in June of 1879, Olivia Bryant signed away her marriage and her rights to Marcus's property. It would take a few more months for everything to be finalized, but the worst was over. She was finally, truly free. That night, to celebrate, Tom and Rose organized a small party at the farmhouse. A few of their closest friends came, along with some of the men from the logging operation and their families. There was food and music and dancing, and for the first time in longer than Grant could remember, he felt genuinely, completely happy. He found Olivia standing on the porch, looking up at the stars, and joined her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "About how different my life is now compared to a year ago," Olivia said, leaning into him. "Last spring I was trapped in a nightmare, married to a monster, convinced I would never escape. And now I am here with you and I am free. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I never want to wake up," Grant said. He took a deep breath, suddenly nervous. "Olivia, I know we said we would wait until the divorce was final, but I cannot wait any longer to ask you this. Will you marry me? Not right away, but when everything is settled and you are ready. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a future together, have a family, grow old watching the sunset from our own porch." Olivia turned to face him, and there were tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling wider than he had ever seen. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Grant Whitmore, I will marry you. I will marry you and love you for the rest of my life." Grant kissed her then, long and deep, and heard cheering from inside the house. They broke apart to find Tom and Rose and all their friends crowded in the doorway, grinning and applauding. "About time," Tom called out. "I was beginning to think you were never going to ask her." "And I was beginning to think I was going to have to ask him," Olivia shot back, laughing through her tears. The divorce was finalized in September of 1879. 2 weeks later, on a crisp autumn day with the leaves turning gold and red in the forests around them, Grant and Olivia were married in a small church in Oregon City. Rose cried through the entire ceremony, and Tom had to lend her his handkerchief. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, and when Grant slipped the ring onto Olivia's finger, she looked up at him with so much love in her eyes that he felt his own eyes sting with tears. "I love you," she whispered as they sealed their vows with a kiss. "I love you too," Grant whispered back. "Always." They moved into a small house on the logging property that Tom and Grant had built together. It was modest but comfortable, with a big fireplace and plenty of windows that let in the Oregon light. Olivia filled it with music and laughter and love, and Grant came home every evening to the sound of her playing piano or singing while she cooked dinner. The first year of their marriage was pure happiness. They learned each other's rhythms and quirks, built a life together from the ground up. Grant taught Olivia to fish and to ride properly, and she taught him to appreciate music and literature. They worked hard during the day and fell into each other's arms at night, and Grant had never known such contentment was possible. In the spring of 1880, Olivia told Grant she was pregnant. They had been hoping for a baby, but when it actually happened, Grant found himself overwhelmed with joy and terror in equal measure. "What if I am not a good father?" he worried. "What if I do something wrong?" "You will be a wonderful father," Olivia assured him, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "You are the kindest, most patient man I know. Our children will be lucky to have you." Their first child, a son they named Charlie after Grant's brother, was born in December of 1880. Grant held his tiny son in his arms and felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. Olivia recovered quickly from the birth, and they settled into the chaos and joy of new parenthood. 2 years later, their daughter Emma was born, with Olivia's dark hair and Grant's green eyes. She was a happy, energetic baby who kept them both on their toes. And 2 years after that, another son, James, joined the family. The logging business continued to thrive. Grant and Tom had built it into one of the most respected operations in the territory, known for quality lumber and fair treatment of their workers. They employed over 30 men now, and Grant found he enjoyed the challenges of running a business, of building something that would last. Rose and Tom had children too, 3 girls in quick succession, and the two families were constantly in and out of each other's homes. Sunday dinners became a tradition, loud and chaotic affairs with children running everywhere, and the adults talking and laughing around the table. On quiet evenings after the children were asleep, Grant and Olivia would sit together on their porch, watching the sun set over the Oregon forests. Sometimes they would talk about their days, about their plans and dreams for the future. Sometimes they would just sit in comfortable silence, hands clasped, content in each other's presence. "You ever think about that night in the storm?" Olivia asked one such evening. "When you found me hiding in your wood shed?" "All the time," Grant admitted. "I think about how close I came to not hearing you, to staying inside and letting the storm pass. How different our lives would be if I had." "I think you would have heard me," Olivia said confidently. "I think we were meant to find each other, Grant. The universe was not going to let us miss our chance." "Well, I am grateful to the universe then," Grant said, pulling her closer and kissing the top of her head, "for bringing you into my life. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Whitmore." "And you are my hero," Olivia said softly. "My brave, wonderful hero who saved me from the storm and showed me what real love looks like." Years passed, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Charlie grew tall and strong like his father, with a serious demeanor and a gift for working with wood. Emma was bright and creative, always singing or drawing or making up stories. James was the adventurous one, constantly getting into mischief and keeping his parents on their toes. Grant taught his sons the logging business, taking them out to the mill as soon as they were old enough. He taught them to respect the forest, to take only what they needed, to replant and think about the future. He taught Emma too when she expressed interest, not caring that it was unusual for a girl to know about lumber and business. Olivia continued teaching piano, and their home was always filled with music. She also got involved in the community, helping to start a school in Oregon City and advocating for better treatment of workers and their families. Grant watched her flourish with pride, this woman who had once been so beaten down but who had become a force for good in their community. They heard news of Marcus Bryant only once more. About 5 years after their divorce, word reached them that he had died in a fire at his San Francisco home, drunk and unable to escape. Grant felt no sadness at the news, only relief that the threat was finally, truly over. As the years rolled by, Grant and Olivia celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, weathered illnesses and losses, supported each other through hard times and rejoiced together during good ones. Their love, far from fading, only grew stronger and deeper with time. They had started as 2 lonely people thrown together by chance and a storm, but they had built something lasting and true. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Their children now grown and starting families of their own, Grant and Olivia took a trip back to Nevada. They rode out to the place where Grant's old cabin had been. Someone else owned the land now, had built a bigger house and expanded the operation, but the basic landscape was the same. "This is where it all started," Grant said, looking around at the familiar mountains and high desert. "Where I found you in that storm. Where you saved my life," Olivia corrected, taking his hand. "Where we saved each other, really. I was running from death and you were dying of loneliness. We were both lost and we found each other." "I would do it all again," Grant said. "Every hard mile, every danger, every moment of fear. I would do it all again for the life we have built together." "Me too," Olivia said, tears in her eyes. "Grant Whitmore, I have loved you for 20 years and I will love you for 20 more and beyond that. You are my home, my heart, my everything." They kissed there on the Nevada high desert, the wind whipping around them just as it had that night so many years ago. But this time, there was no fear, no uncertainty. There was only love and gratitude, and the absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. They returned to Oregon and to their family. More grandchildren were born, and Grant and Olivia's house became the gathering place for the whole extended clan. Sunday dinners grew even more chaotic and wonderful, with multiple generations crowded around tables and children playing in every room. Grant retired from active work in the logging business when he turned 60, handing over operations to Charlie and his capable hands. He and Olivia spent their days taking care of the grandchildren, working in their garden, and enjoying the quiet peace they had earned. On their 30th anniversary, Olivia surprised Grant by playing a new composition she had written on the piano. It was beautiful and haunting, full of longing and love and hope. "I call it The Storm," she told him when she finished. "It is about the night we met, about being lost and afraid and then finding salvation in the most unexpected place." Grant pulled her into his arms, his heart full to bursting. "It is perfect. You are perfect. I am the luckiest man alive." "And I am the luckiest woman," Olivia replied, looking up at him with eyes that still sparkled with love after all these years. "Thank you, Grant, for that night and every night since. Thank you for being brave enough to step out into the storm." They lived many more happy years together, surrounded by family and friends, active in their community and deeply, contentedly in love. When Grant finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Olivia held his hand and whispered words of love that he carried with him into whatever came next. Olivia lived another 3 years, and in that time, she finished writing a memoir of her life, of her escape from Marcus and her long journey to Oregon with Grant. She wanted their story preserved, wanted their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren to know what real love looked like, what courage and kindness could build. She titled it simply, The Storm, and it was published by a small Oregon press to modest success. But its real value was in the family, passed down through generations. A reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could be found, that love could bloom in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes salvation came in the form of a lonely cowboy brave enough to venture out into a storm. Olivia passed away peacefully in her sleep on a night when thunder rolled across the Oregon forests, surrounded by her children. She was buried next to Grant under a big oak tree on land that had once been part of the logging operation, but that they had set aside as a family cemetery. Rose was buried there too, and Tom, and eventually many others of their extended family. Their children erected a simple gravestone with both their names and a single inscription. Two souls lost in a storm, found each other and built a love that lasted forever. And on stormy nights, when the wind howled and the rain came down in sheets, The family would gather together in the house that Grant and Olivia had built and tell stories about the brave cowboy and the woman he found hiding from a storm. They would talk about how she never left his side again, how they had faced every challenge together, and how their love had created a legacy that would endure for generations. The house still stood strong after all those years, a testament to Grant's craftsmanship and care. The piano Olivia had played still sat in the corner of the living room, now played by great-great-grandchildren who had never met her, but who carried her gift for music. The land they had worked and loved continued to provide for the family, the forests they had carefully managed still strong and healthy. In the town of Oregon City, there was a small museum that featured Oregon pioneer families, and Grant and Olivia Whitmore had a prominent display. There were photographs of them together, serious and formal in the style of the time, but if you looked closely, you could see the love in their eyes, the way they leaned slightly toward each other even in stillness. There were excerpts from Olivia's memoir, describing their journey and the building of their life together. And there was a display about their contributions to the community, the logging business they had helped build, the school Olivia had founded, the legacy of hard work and kindness they had left behind. But the real legacy was not in museums or books or buildings. It was in the countless lives they had touched, the example they had set, the proof they had provided that love could overcome even the worst circumstances. It was in every marriage that held strong through hard times, every person who found the courage to leave an abusive situation, every act of kindness shown to a stranger in need. Grant and Olivia's story became the foundation that their family built upon. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren all knew the story by heart. They knew about the storm and the fear and the long journey north. They knew about the threats and the dangers and the final confrontation with Marcus. And they knew about the love that had sustained Grant and Olivia through everything, the deep, abiding love that had made all the hardship worthwhile. On the 100th anniversary of the night Grant found Olivia in that storm, the family gathered at the old homestead for a celebration. There were over 60 people there, spanning 4 generations, all descended from Grant and Olivia or from Rose and Tom. They shared a huge feast, told stories, and sang songs, including several that Olivia had composed during her long life. As the evening drew to a close and a gentle rain began to fall, the oldest of Grant and Olivia's great-grandchildren, a woman named Sarah who was nearly 80 herself, stood up to make a toast. "To Grant and Olivia," she said, raising her glass, "who showed us all what true love looks like. Who taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Who built not just a family but a legacy of kindness and strength that will last forever. May we all be brave enough to step out into our own storms, and may we all be lucky enough to find someone whose hand we can hold through the rain." To Grant and Olivia, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. And somewhere, in whatever place souls go when they leave this world, 2 people who had once been lonely and lost stood hand in hand, watching over the family they had created, grateful for the storm that had brought them together and the love that had sustained them through everything that came after. Their story was complete, a circle closed, a love fulfilled. From that first moment, when Grant heard crying in the darkness and stepped out into the storm to help, to the final peaceful moments when Olivia joined him in eternity, theirs had been a story of hope and healing, of courage and compassion, of a love so strong it transcended time itself. And in Oregon, where the forest still grew tall and strong, where the rain still fell gentle and persistent, where families still gathered around dinner tables to tell stories of those who came before, The legacy of a lonely cowboy and the woman he found hiding from a storm lived on. Proof that love, real love, the kind that changes everything, is always worth fighting for, always worth the risk, and always, always worth the wait.